This video will really specifically be on bar review tips for bar reviewees. So to those of you who have been asking for this type of video, then this is for you. Welcome to my channel. I'm Tina. I'm a corporate lawyer in the Philippines. So, the bar exam's coming up. It's only the most important exam of your life and you're gearing up to prepare for it. The mere thought is incredibly daunting, I know, because bar review, it's really a commitment to spend the next 6 months or so of your life studying. If you need general study tips, I actually already have a video up of my effective law school study tips, which could still be helpful to you guys who are preparing for the bar exam. I will leave a link to that video down in the description box below. This video though is not just on study tips. This video will really specifically be on bar review tips for bar reviewees. So to those of you who have been asking for this type of video, then this is for you. These tips are based on my personal experience studying for the bar exam after I graduated from UP Law in 2012, taking the bar that same year, and passing the exam the succeeding year. Back then, preparing for the bar, I had very little guidance on bar review tips and the entire bar review experience. Sure, there were tips here and there that you would hear from lawyers, from the Bar Operations Commission of your school, from friends and family who had previously taken and passed the bar. But really, the Philippine bar exam experience cannot be fully prepared for or even fully understood unless you go through its demands and rigors yourself. So while I can give you these tips which worked well for me, the best teacher to tell you what taking the bar exam and the whole Philippine bar experience is really like is the future you. The you 6 months from now who will have taken the bar exam, passed it, signed the roll of attorneys, and taken your lawyer's oath. So this video will really be about the techniques that can get you from where you are now to that triumphant you 6 months from now. These tips worked well for me. I sincerely hope that they work for you the same way as well. Let's begin. Okay, my first tip is to start studying early. And when I say early, I don't mean 4 months earlier than the official start of the bar review classes in the bar review center that you chose to enroll in. I mean as early as your first year of law school. I've mentioned before in my video on law school study tips that I would liken bar exam knowledge to a pyramid. The pyramid is comprised of number 1, what you've learned as a freshman law student. On top of that, what you've learned as a sophomore law student, then as a junior law student, and as a senior law student. Bar review is traditionally just around 6 to 7 months long. I know that bar review period may be longer this year because of the COVID-19 situation, but yeah, it's generally around 6 to 7 months long. That seems like a long time. But in reality, considering the sheer volume of the things that you have to read and internalize and memorize and understand, it's not very much time at all. And during those 6 to 7 months, you're not just supposed to be then, at that point, studying new material or learning new material. You should generally only be polishing, refining, rememorizing, rereading what should already be in your brain as stock knowledge. I would say that around 85% of bar review is stock knowledge and 15% is learning new matter that you haven't studied before. So you see the importance of building your pyramid, your bar knowledge early. Always remember that when you study, day-to-day survival is the short-term goal, but passing the bar exam is the long-term objective. Keep in mind that the harder you study early on, the easier it will be for you later on in bar review. Think of it this way, you can't cram 4 years worth of knowledge into 6 months of bar review, unless you want to lose your mind. So when you're in law school, your mentality should not be, oh, I'm studying because I want to pass my terror prof's recit tomorrow. Your thought process should be, I'm studying because I want to do well in the bar exam. So as early as your first year of law school, study. Study hard and study with purpose. My next bar review tip is to have a study schedule and to follow that schedule. Like I said, bar review seems like a long time, right? I mean, it is 6 months of your life. But you must realize that if you don't bring some form of structure into that period, then you could easily lose track of the days and of the things that you have to study. If you don't have a schedule, then before you know it, then the bar exam will be like 1 month away without you having even gotten to your second reading. Not good. So, address this by creating study deadlines for yourself. In short, a study schedule. When my batch was reviewing for the bar, we had different study schedules. Some of us planned our study schedule for the day by bar subject. So for example, today political law, tomorrow civil law. Others planned it in a more specific way. So they planned it by parang sub-subjects under the specific bar subject. Like for example, today administrative law, tomorrow constitutional law 1. And there were some who were even more calculated. They planned their study schedules down to the hour, as in 7 a.m. to 12 noon, obligations and contracts, and then 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. sales. Only you can really say what type of study schedule would suit you best. But what I'm saying is that regardless of what your study habits are, because we all have different study habits, what is important is that you have to have a schedule. Because of the incredible amount of readings that you will go through, you will get overwhelmed if you don't at least have some semblance of structure and compartmentalization. What worked for me in particular was planning my bar review schedule by weeks. Before I started studying intensively, I planned my study schedule starting from the first month of bar review right up to the first pre-week. Pre-week just means the week leading up to the bar exam. So since there are 4 bar Sundays, there are 4 pre-weeks. Anyway, I planned my study schedule by weeks. Of course, I can't remember what exactly it is now, but I do remember the sequence. So it would be like week 2 and 3, remedial law. Week 3, criminal law. I'll show you a more detailed schedule later. But yeah, I didn't schedule my studying down to the hour. I knew that would be way too restrictive for me. I would not recommend scheduling your studying down to the hour because you want to be able to really study your weak points well without feeling so pressured to finish by a certain minute. Also, when you plan your study schedule, it's important to structure it so that you allot extra time for those subjects that you feel are your weakest. Offset it for your study time for those subjects which you feel are your strongest. For me, taxation is definitely my Waterloo, so I studied it for an extra 2 weeks. My strongest subjects were my commercial law subjects, so I correspondingly lessened my study time for commercial law by 2 weeks. So what did my study schedule look like? I planned my entire study schedule so that I would be able to do 2 readings per subject. Those 2 readings consisted of codals, commentaries, and Sanbeda Red Notes. I'll get more into that later. The order of my schedule was not the chronological order of the bar exam. Rather, I studied in reverse order of the bar exam. Why in reverse order, you might ask? It's so that the last subjects that I studied, which would be poly, law, and labor, so the subjects for the first bar Sunday, would still be the freshest in my mind on the first bar Sunday. So the order of my schedule looked something like this, spread over the span of 6 months. So you have legal and judicial ethics and practical exercises, then remedial law, criminal law, mercantile law, civil law, taxation, labor, political, and then that would end my first reading. And then I would basically have the same sequence for my second reading. So you see that the 2 subjects that you end up studying last are the 2 subjects of the first bar Sunday. Then the 2 subjects, civil law and tax, are the subjects of the second bar Sunday, and so on. So because of that order, you can be sure that the subjects are still fresh in your mind when you actually sit down to take the bar exam. My next bar review tip is do not read too many different materials. If you think that law school is about information saturation, then just you wait until you get to bar review. During bar review, you will wake up, breathe, and live for one purpose, and one purpose alone. And that purpose is to study. It's overwhelming enough that for half a year, you'll be studying for easily 14 hours a day. From early mornings wherein you're half asleep, to late nights wherein you're also half asleep. So to start with, it's already so much information that you have to take in. You don't want to add to that inevitable information saturation by throwing into the mix 3 different textbooks, 4 different reviewers, 5 different bar buddies. So what I'm saying is, don't make bar review any harder than it has to be. Choose only those materials which you really need and choose them wisely. Stick to a lean list of materials and don't deviate from the materials in that list unless you truly feel like you need to learn something which cannot be learned from the materials in that same list. For all bar review subjects, I stuck to the 3 material rule. So first, your codal, absolutely indispensable. Second, your commentary or textbook of choice. And third, your reviewer of choice, mine always being Sanbeda Red Notes or Memory Aid. Let's go one by one. First is the codal. For bar review, I used the same codal that I used during law school. For commentaries, I used a mix of 2. So some of them I had already read when I was in law school. I had new photocopies of them made because I didn't want to read the same pages that I had already highlighted and written on before. I wanted to be able to freshly highlight what I was reading. And some of them were new, which I had never read before. Bottom line is that I really recommend that you would stick to just that holy trinity of materials. When it comes to bar materials, more is not more. If you read like 10 different materials, instead of internalizing all that information with ease, it's much more likely that you will get hopelessly confused by, or overwhelmed with, or burned out by all that information. Bakit ka ba gusto maging lawyer? As with anything in life, don't overdo it. Stick to 3. Now, if you feel like you need to know something better that you cannot learn from your holy trinity of materials, that's when you should refer to another textbook. But otherwise, just really keep it simple and don't stray from that holy trinity of materials. On a related matter, I highly recommend that you guys use actual books or actual printed material to study rather than iPads, computers, tablets, the like. There are so many studies that suggest that reading from a paper compared to reading from a screen is much better for recall and comprehension purposes. So, take advantage of that science and study on paper. Okay, my next bar review tip is to master the basics. I cannot emphasize this enough. Master the basics. The dynamic of the bar exam is different from the dynamic in law school. When we're in law school, we know that in recitation, in exams, okay, let's be candid here, we know that the professor is trying to trick us. The professor is trying to pick apart our argument, or trying to distract us with unnecessary facts, or trying to confuse us with one important fact, which would turn our original answer upside down. This they do to really drive critical thinking in the students, to make sure that their law students really know the law and jurisprudence inside out. The dynamic of the bar, however, is different. The bar exam generally seeks to test the basics of the law. So basics talaga siya. I actually think that bar exam questions were simpler and easier than the questions in your law school midterms and finals. Because in law school exams, questions were so incredibly long and had so many convoluted, irrelevant facts intended to confuse the student. Bar exam questions in and of themselves are much simpler. It's just that it becomes so difficult because the scope from which they could draw the questions is just so broad. This is not to say, of course, that bar examiners are not trying to test you, because obviously they are. But what I'm saying is that bar exam questions tend to be more straightforward, less wordy, less tricky, and shorter than the questions in your law school exams. Yes, bar examiners might give you confusing facts, but they're really testing you on basic principles. They're trying to extract that basic principle from you. So, because bar examiners are testing you on the basics, don't feel compelled to read a ton of academic textbooks discussing the academic nuances of a law, or 30 cases applying the exact same provision of law. They may have been relevant in law school, but they're not relevant now. So how exactly do you master the basics? Stick to your codals and to your Sunbeda Red notes, which already contain landmark cases. Gun to my head, if I had to choose 2 bar review materials which you had to master, then those 2 would be it. Codals and Sunbeda Red notes. And if I had to choose one out of those 2, then it would definitely be codals, obviously. To master your basics, codal is always king. Above all, master your codal. Basics, basics, basics. My next bar review tip is to stick to reading the same material again and again, over and over and over. So by now, you guys know that you must have your holy trinity of bar review materials. Now keep reading that, and then read it again, and then read it again if you have to. It's been well established that repetition is the key to memory. So read and repeat and reread. It may seem counterintuitive to read material over and over again. Once you're done reading and highlighting one thing, you may already be itching to move on to the next thing that you have to study. Ganun kasi tayo sa law school, diba? But during bar review, you have to resist that urge. You have to pound and pound your brain with the same information again and again, day in and day out. So keep reading your holy trinity of materials again and again and again. Also, don't think that you need to do 4 or 5 readings. What matters is the quality of your readings and not the number. Just 2 readings wherein you're steady and deeply focused is way better than 5 readings wherein you're distracted, your brain is in the clouds, and you're only studying on a superficial level. I myself only did 2 readings during the bar review, and that meant 2 readings of the exact same material. During the first reading, I extensively marked the material, highlighting, underlining, writing on the margins. During the second reading naman, I would only make minimal marks na lang, so putting asterisks on parts that were important or underlining some highlighted portions. Point is, it works to study the same material over and over. Also, many scientific studies suggest that it's more likely that you will remember something if you read it out loud. So when you're reading, softly mouth what you're studying to yourself. Softly lang ah. Just be considerate of other bar reviewees and do it quietly. One way to make this easy for yourself and for those around you is to study with earplugs. Because when you wear earplugs, you can hear yourself even if you murmur something to yourself very, very softly. If you don't wear earplugs, then just to hear yourself over the ambient noise in the library or the coffee shop, you'll have to raise your voice, which is annoying to other bar reviewees who are also trying to study. I myself wore earplugs every single day of bar review for that purpose. Earplugs also help tremendously if you're someone who gets easily distracted by ambient noise. To this day, in practice, I still wear earplugs a lot. My next bar review tip is to attend bar lectures only for those topics or subjects wherein you feel you are weakest. The bar review center that you enroll in actually has very little bearing in whether you will pass the bar or not. After having gone through the whole thing, I can now say that bar review programs exist, number 1, to give us some form of structure when we're studying, number 2, to give us materials that we can study like handouts, and number 3, to give us some comfort or something like a security blanket, knowing that we did all steps in our power to pass the bar, including enrolling ourselves in a bar review center. But other than that, enrolling in a bar review center or a bar review program has no real purpose, because 90% of the time, bar review should really be about good old-fashioned self-study, as in sitting down, facing your book, and studying. Don't spend your days attending bar lectures. Spend your days studying and studying and studying. When you enroll in a bar review program, you will be given a schedule of lectures, which includes the topics of the lectures and the speakers. Now, using that schedule, plan which bar lectures you're going to attend and keep it to a minimum. I recommend that you go to number 1, the lectures for those topics that you feel that you really need, so yung mga weak subjects nyo, and number 2, to pre-week lectures. It's important to be efficient when studying for the bar because bar review time is just so precious. So if the bar review topic is something that you're not terrible at, then just skip it. You can always use those hours that would otherwise have been spent getting ready to go to the bar review center, traveling, saying hello to your friends, waiting for the lecturer, attending the talk, having merienda, traveling back to your house. You could have used that time to study. Do not rely on bar lecturers to feed you the knowledge that you lack. You yourself must feed yourself that knowledge. So during bar review, I went to only 2 types of lectures. The first one was taxation law lectures because, like I said, it's my Achilles heel. And number 2, to pre-week lectures. The rest of the time, I just studied instead of attending lectures, and I would highly recommend that you guys do the same. My next bar review tip is to read previous bar questions and answers, or Q&As. This is something that can easily be overlooked, but I'm really glad that I did this. I read bar exam questions from previous years. Reading previous bar Q&As is helpful because it really shows you the recurring topics that bar examiners frequently ask. These are topics that you can tell are important to them, topics which have withstood the test of time, topics which have transcended bar years, bar examiners, so you can be sure that they're topics that bar examiners want to test bar examinees on. There's a high probability that examiners will ask you a question on that same topic as the previous bar Q&As. Or if they don't ask you the same question or a similar question, then it would be a permutation of that question because yun nga, they're trying to test you on that same topic. So, read previous bar Q&As. Here's a caveat though. Reading previous bar Q&As is something that you should do towards the latter part of your bar review, after you finish studying everything. If you read it kasi during the earlier parts of bar review, your mind might be tricked into thinking that the topics that you should focus on are those that you repeatedly see being asked in previous bar Q&As, which should not be the case. Previous bar Q&As are just additional ammo that you bring with you into the bar exam, but it should not be a substitute for studying everything. So what I did was that I literally read them the night before every bar exam Sunday. So I read them on Saturday night. I brought them with me to my hotel room and then I read them at like 10 p.m. at night. Okay, my next bar review tip is do not read last-minute tips from other law schools. When I was a sophomore and junior, I was part of the Bar Operations Commission of my school and of the org that I was a part of. And I remember how one of our tasks was to deliver last-minute tips to the rooms of the bar reviewees. I remember how we would slip the tips under the doors of the rooms of those bar reviewees. And I remember thinking to myself, it must be so stressful to feel compelled to read those last-minute tips on top of the already crushing pressure of trying to retain what you studied. So when it was my turn to take the bar, I did not read any last-minute tips. The night before the bar exam, in my hotel room, I just read Sanbeda Red notes and previous bar Q&As. The problem with reading last-minute tips is that they are based entirely on speculation. It's actually basically nothing but chismis. The night before bar exams, you're not supposed to be reading yourself into a panicked frenzy anymore. You should have done that during bar review. Just kidding. Or am I? It's a given that nerves and jitters are part of the bar exam equation. Don't fan the flames of those nerves and turn it into a full-blown panic by feeling compelled to read all the last-minute material thrown at you. It's important to stay as cool, calm, and collected as you can before taking the bar exam and while you're taking it, because your energies need to be focused on answering the question in front of you correctly instead of trying to quash your raging nerves. Besides, if you studied enough, then those last-minute tips should be nothing new to you. So instead of reading last-minute tips in your hotel room, just use that time to browse your Kodal, your reviewer, previous Bar Q&As, and to just pray and relax. My next bar review tip is to make time to unwind. I know, there's just so much to study, right? There are stacks upon stacks of paper that you have yet to highlight, lengthy enumerations that you have yet to memorize, reviewers that you have yet to even open. But you must know that you can do none of that if you don't keep your sanity intact during the bar review period. If you're so exhausted and fed up and burned out, you wouldn't even want to open your book. Or your book would be in front of you, but you're not absorbing a single thing. How will you study then? So you see, unwinding is not just something that you give into. It's not just something na pinagbigyan mo yung sarili mo. It's actually necessary. So study hard, but every day, create a little pocket of time for yourself. Use that time to do something that distresses you, something that calms you down or eases your mind. It could be anything from scrolling through Instagram, to doing a home workout, to FaceTiming your boyfriend or girlfriend, or both. Wag both. For me, my favorite thing to do to distress was to listen to music while spacing out. But no matter what distressing activity you choose, remember that you have to be aware of the time that you're spending doing it. You need to give yourself a time cap. For example, I'm going to allow myself to do this for 30 minutes only. Because it's easy to lose track of time when you're doing something that you enjoy. You don't want to exceed your time cap because you could throw off your whole schedule for the day. Or even for the next day. So do whatever it is you want to do, but be conscious of time. Okay, my next bar tip applies to actually answering a bar question. When answering a bar question, always start with number 1, your direct answer to the question. So that's usually a yes or a no. And then your legal basis, and then your application of the facts to your legal basis. And then lastly, your conclusion. This manner of answering makes it easy for both you and the bar examiner. For you, having this framework prevents you from going in circles with your answer, or from penning an answer that's just all over the place. For the examiner, he or she does away with the laborious and annoying exercise of having to restructure your answer kasi walang flow. So, it's a win-win way to answer. Let's say that this is the question asked. Always remember that the first thing that you write should be the direct answer to the question. Don't start with anything else. So in this case, since the question is clearly answerable by a yes or no, then start with that. Next, cite your legal basis. If you remember the exact provision or the exact case, then well and good, cite that. For example, under Article 1156 of the Civil Code, or in the case of Oposa versus Factoran, blah blah blah. If you don't remember it, however, or if you're not sure that you remember it correctly, then it would be just fine to write based on jurisprudence, or under the Corporation Code, under the Revised Penal Code, etc. Third, apply the law to the set of facts. To do this, I like to start with the introductory phrase based on the facts, or in this case, or a simple here ... Fourth, state your conclusion. So your entire answer would look something like this. If you answer this way, then you will immediately see the logical flow of the answer. Your answer just flows. It's not all over the place. So to conclude, always keep in mind that this should be the structure of your answer. 1. The direct answer to the question without explaining anything yet. 2. Your legal basis. 3. Your application of the law to the set of facts. And 4th, your conclusion. My next bar review tip is to practice writing. And when I say practice writing, I don't mean practice writing at a leisurely pace. I mean practice speed writing. Like writing as if your life depended on it. Do not underestimate the importance of legibility of your handwriting. Believe it or not, your bar examiners aren't robots. They are people like the rest of us, and they are people who will be grading thousands upon thousands of booklets under immense pressure to finish checking them by a certain time. So between 2 test booklets, one looking neat and tidy and legible, and another looking like that person just learned how to write 2 months ago, which one do you think would put the bar examiner in a better mood? The booklet which makes the examiner's job a breeze, or the booklet which he or she has to decipher like Egyptian hieroglyphics? You know which one. So as examinees, we have to make it easy for examiners to grade us fairly. Let's try not to annoy the people who have the fate of our lawyer dreams in their hands, right? So practice writing legibly and practice writing fast. You can use graphing paper that you can buy in National Bookstore to practice writing letters over and over and over until that repetition becomes muscle memory to you. But here's a tip: if even after practicing your penmanship is still terrible, if you can't improve it, then just write bigger and increase the spaces between each letter and between each word. That won't fix bad penmanship, obviously, but at least the examiner will be able to see your bad penmanship clearly. It's still less of a headache. My next bar tip is do not leave anything blank. Partial points count. If you're not absolutely sure of your answer, or if you know that your answer is incomplete or lacking in some way, do not think that it's a lost cause. It doesn't mean that it's a complete flop, because partial points are a big deal, and partial points can save you. So what you have to do is, lumawan ka lang. Answer as best as you can. Never leave anything blank, because contrary to popular belief, bar examiners are merciful if your answer has substance. They will give you partial points for your incomplete or partially wrong and partially correct answer. So answer as normal, and then just leave a mark on the margin. A simple hyphen will do, just to signal to yourself that you're not 100% on that particular answer. If you have a bit of extra time later after you're done answering everything, then that's when you can go back on and improve your so-so answer. If you really don't know the answer, even after having gone back to the question, just take an educated guess. Mambola kayo if you have to. Playa! Seriously, the bar exam isn't right minus wrong anyway, so really there's nothing to lose. My next bar tip is to be aware of legal issues on current events. Even if you dislike politics, there's no denying that being a lawyer carries with it the presumption that you are politically aware. You can't be a lawyer and at the same time be ignorant of current events and what's going on in the world. So you must anticipate that you could face questions on legal issues on current events. So my tip is to read up on current events and to formulate your legal opinions on them in advance. For example, we're currently facing an issue on this ABS-CBN shutdown, right? Think to yourself, what are the legal issues surrounding that shutdown? There are issues on legislative franchises, on the power of the NTC vis-a-vis Congress, on freedom of expression and press under the Bill of Rights, etc., etc. So since you know that bar examiners could draw inspiration for their bar questions from current events, then when you're studying, you should give a bit of extra attention to those topics. Now, I know, how are you supposed to read or watch the news on top of all the bar review stuff that you still have to study? I'd say read up on the news on your more chill days, when you have a bit of extra time to spare. You can also watch or listen to the news while you're commuting or driving or exercising. My next bar review tip is to deactivate the social media accounts on which you waste your time the most. Okay, I know millennials these days are addicted to social media. The thought of falling off the face of the social media world may seem inconceivable to some of you. But think of it this way, and this is what I used to tell myself during bar review. What if I don't deactivate? And then I don't pass the bar exam? Won't I always ask myself, what if? What if I had spent less time on social media? Would I have passed then? That's a huge what if. It's a heavy burden to carry on your shoulders. So my friends, don't take any chances. Don't think twice, just do it. Don't anymore try to justify retaining them. Extreme times call for extreme measures. For me, the social media account that I deactivated during bar review was Facebook. This elimination of distractions doesn't just apply to social media. It applies to all things that you know could break your focus. Remember that you have one thing to do as a bar reviewee, and that is to study. Anything else that pulls your focus from studying is a distraction. You don't want to live with the regret that you might have passed had you eliminated those distractions. Anything that might help you succeed in the bar exam, do it. And anything that might contribute to your failure in the bar exam, set it aside for now. There will be plenty of time to pick up where you left off once you're a lawyer. My next bar/bar exam tip is do not compare yourself to others. No two bar experiences are exactly alike. It's easy to fall into the trap of comparison when you're studying for the bar. Yung parang, shucks, she's already on her 3rd reading. Ako first pa lang. Shit, yung valedictorian namin nag-top sa mock bar, tapos ako barely passed lang. Oh no, Ateneo Mem-Aid yung basa niya, pero ako I'm reading San Beda Mem-Aid. Stop doing that to yourself. Stop second-guessing and trust yourself. People read different materials, different authors, different memory aids from different schools. But these different materials are all permutations of the same thing. Authorities may have differing opinions on some contentious topics, but otherwise they're all the same. I really proved this to myself when I was in bar review because I encountered and became friends with so many different bar reviewees from different provincial law schools. We obviously all read different materials, had different study habits, but those who I could see studied hard passed the bar exam. It didn't matter that we had so many differences among us, including different study materials. So you see, materials are really just there to help you along. They're not the be-all end-all that will have a huge impact on whether you will pass the bar or not. So you must free your mind of all these nagging doubts about all these external factors. Personally, I never doubted myself when I was reviewing for the bar. Not because I was confident that I was gonna pass, not that. It was because I was too busy and too focused on studying that I didn't have time to mind other people's business, much less compare myself to them. You must focus. Focus on studying. And if you don't feel like studying, study anyway. Push yourself, and you will be rewarded. Okay guys, so those are all my bar exam / bar review tips for now. But my final words for you guys are these. You must not panic during bar review because of the thought that you have so many things to study. Make scheduled and systematic studying your daily routine. When you're exhausted, take a break, but otherwise, keep on keeping on. There is no bigger bar exam regret than the thought that you did not give it your all. I myself am very fortunate to have passed the 2012 bar exam, which based on its passing rate was the second most difficult bar exam in Philippine history. Nakakaloka! But if I was able to do it, then there's no reason why you guys can't too. Study. Believe that you can do it. Trust that the universe, combined with your efforts, will give you your deepest desires. So that is really it for now, you guys. If you guys have any further questions, then please leave me a comment in the description box below. Good luck to all you bar reviewees out there. Godspeed. If you like this video, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up. Please also don't forget to subscribe to my channel and to hit the notification bell below if you guys would like to be notified of my future videos. Thank you so much for watching and see you in my next video. Bye! Study!